My name is Ann Homan. I am, of many things, a storyteller, a teacher, a director of theater, a really good ukulele player, mostly a researcher of history, a gardener. I have 7 grandchildren, so that's pretty cool. They would like me to say that. So, and I live in a historic old house in Angola, and I run an Airbnb, so I keep really busy with projects every day, something new on the plate every day. In the Shrewsbury-Windle project, I decided that the story would be told through the eyes of Mary, who was the daughter, and then later on, Ann Windle. So I have 2 characters. And I do a quick little change, you wear certain things, and when I go to Mrs. Windle, it's not an intermission, nobody goes anywhere. I take the apron off because Mary was the daughter and she did all this work at the end of her life. So put the apron down, put the hair up in a, bun kind of thing for Mrs. Windle, and we're off. And simply change a spot on the stage. I chose those 2 because they both loved that house so much. Mary, the daughter, actually lived in the house for 75 years before she had to move in with her daughter, the only grandchild. She was the 6th child born to the Shrewsburys. Mr. Shrewsbury, he sold salt. And he came to Madison to sell salt. And he met Ellen, his wife, and they were married. And then he went into flour and pork productions. And that's where he made his big money. In those days, the flour, the grain, came from Iowa to right there to Madison on the river. He would do 20,000 bushels of grain a year during the heyday. Take it off the boats and go in and have it ground and then ship that flour out. So he made his money in flour and pork, not in salt. And they had a party. They built this house, 8,000 square feet, 13 rooms, 12 fireplaces for the 6 children. Mary was born the year after. The house was built. 5 boys were born. But the house was, as Mary said, a bit cursed. One day the mills burnt down to the ground and he didn't have insurance. So he not only lost the mill, but he lost the possibility of having it again. And the workers that he was in charge of were out of work now. After that, 1 son died, and then eventually 2 more sons died. He died. He fell down the steps of the back porch of the Shrewsbury mansion. The account says he was looking at something coming in on the river because the river is right behind the house. He was looking at that and he missed a step and he fell down. He hit his head. The doctor came and he died that afternoon. So then he died. Then the other 2 boys died. All 4 boys died, never married, so there were no heirs to take over. The father died, the mills burnt down, and now there's just Mary and her mother in this house. And her mother often stayed in bed. Mary, she went to school for a couple of years, then she came home and she was going back. She wanted to go back to Paris. She wanted to get married. She was young and beautiful, and she didn't do those things because she couldn't leave her mother. And I have her letters. I found her letters that she wrote. I found letters from suitors that said, "I would like to see you, Mary. Can you see me? Oh, I guess you cannot see me. I think we would be good together, Mary. Can you come out and see me? Can you come up to Louisville on the boat?" And she didn't do that. She felt that she had to stay with her mother. Her mother was ailing, so it was Mary who planted the gardens. It was Mary who planted the orchard, could sell it to get money to pay the taxes, etc. And then the mother died. Mary finally married, but she married an older man whose wife had died with 3 grown children. And in her letters, it doesn't say that she fell in love. She just simply married him. And she stayed in the house. He didn't live there. She stayed there. And then she had her daughter Eleanor, and I've seen some lovely photos of Eleanor in the beautiful house. The staircase winds up. It's freestanding. It was quite something at that time. Mary had no money. No money was left to her by the husband when he died. The mother died. No one left her. So she, in 1917, Mary sold the house, this beautiful mansion that was built for $50,000 in that time, which was a lot of money. In 1917, Mary sold the house for $1. $1 to a family. And the family did some remodeling and tried to keep up with it a little bit. But Mary didn't move out for 3 more years until 1920, even though the house was sold. And finally she moved in with her daughter, Eleanor. And then eventually the house went for sale. Well, the Windles were from Chicago. He was a confirmed bachelor, met Ann Windle in the library, and wrote her a note, of which I have the note and saw the note. If you're interested in having a date with me, please come back to the library and wear a green hat. If you have on a green hat, I'll know that you would like to date me. But if you do not have on a green hat, I won't pursue it any further. So she went back to, after she got the note in the post, right? She went back to the library with a little green hat with a feather in it, and he knew that she would, date him. So they did. It was 1937. They dated for 6 weeks. He was a confirmed bachelor. He dated her 6 weeks. They were married 3 months later. Lived in Chicago. He was a reference librarian, the Newberry Library. And they decided that when he retired, they should move to Madison. He had an aunt who taught French at Hanover College. And so they would go to Madison quite often. They were looking for houses, and someone said, why don't you look at this one old house down by the river? And he said, I don't really think I want to see that house. So no, I'm not going. Oh, look at the house. Just look at the house. So he did. He went to look at the Shrewsbury house, and he fell in love with it. So he took Anne and he said, come look at the house. And she said, this is it. We're crazy, but this is it. So he stayed to do the work on it. He cleaned the gardens and the gutters and painted the walls and tried to restore it himself with help from other people he hired. She went back to Chicago to sell the house and pack up 10,000 books that they owned. I mean, he was a librarian and she was an English major, right? And she finally moved by train, and he carried her over the threshold. And they had a party 100 years to the day that the Shrewsburys did. When the Shrewsburys moved in, they had a party. All the governors, Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, the governors even came to their party. So the Windles did the same. And the Windles traveled a lot and collected many artifacts. So she opened up the house, Ann Windle, for people to come take a tour. It was, I think, 10 cents for a tour. And when they had no children, she, in her diary, I love this part, even though they had no children, she said often she could hear a marble rolling across the top floor, from the boys, or they could hear laughter or weeping. The boys were ornery, those 4 boys that slide down that banister and come in late and sneak in, and which they're, all died before Mary. It was very tragic, all of those things that happened. So when the Windles, when he died, and then when she was older, they decided to give the house to Madison, Historic Madison, Inc., and with money in endowment to keep it open. So it can't be sold. Then the money came along in, I believe it would be 2018, to do the restoration, millions of dollars. Spectacular. It is spectacular. When the Cook Cup is given, they look for this kind of restoration. Did they match the carpet to what it was in 1849? Did they match the paint samples? How about the curtain samples? It has to be historically accurate to even be considered for the Cook Cup. And this house is spectacular. And then it was named the Shrewsbury-Windle House. And I fell in love with those 2 women, and the sadness of Mary's story and the hopefulness of Anne's story. So I tell it through their eyes and first person. My name is Mary. Thank you for coming. And it's really been it's a great journey to do that and to find these women that were so in love with this house, and so I could fall in love with them. And then there it is, right?